Okay, I'm ready. Neil?
Ready?
Yeah.
Today is May 27th, 2014. We're in Clinton Park on the Irwin Creek Greenway. I'm Tennille Todd interviewing Ricky Hall. We're going to be discussing the creeks in Charlotte and the issues surrounding the creeks. And Ben Primo is recording. So just go ahead and introduce yourself and just tell me a little bit what you do in Charlotte.
Well, I'm Ricky Hall, and I'm neighborhood president for Reed Park Neighborhood Association, and a place where I grew up, and that's a part of me. My roots are here, and so I have very fond memories of walking, in the creek, playing in the creek, swimming in the creek, and even just walking through here, going to when I played Little League baseball, we'd walk from Reed Park to Revolution and participate in Little League athletics over at Revolution Park. And we would also, my brother and I literally, you know, back in the late 60s, we when we got enough money to go swimming, we every day would help to blaze this particular trail, walking through Lazy Bee stables, crossing two pipes, coming through here where there's two wetland areas there, either going here on Beech Nut to get out or walking here and then going up Barringer Drive to get to the swimming pool, and that's the way we went back home. And also when I went to Kennedy Junior High School at that time, it wasn't middle school then, it was Kennedy Junior High School, we would actually walk from Bank Street over in the South Side community and come through the golf course and then walk through this area the same way as we walked through when we were going to the swimming pool. And it was, of course, it wasn't as open as it is now, but we had trails that came through here, natural trails, and that's what we used to go from place to place and or to recreate and to play. And oftentimes, we get in the creek and, walk the creek, look for golf balls and things of that nature. So we just kind of stayed. And if, as we got older, if you wanted to go to your friend's house over in Clanton Park, that was before the bridge was built at Clanton Road, right at Sergeant Drive. It stopped, it dead end. So there was no access, from Dalton Village at that particular time to Clanton Park. The only way you got there was to cross the creek. So there being no natural bridge other than the bridge that used to be a footbridge that led to Barringer Elementary School, that was the only point. But where we lived, we actually took our shoes off, held them in our hands and went in the creek, crossed the creek, and then that's how we got back and forth. So that's what we did.
How many creeks run through Reed Park?
Well, in terms of tributaries,
All of them combined. How many do you think?
And put that question into your answer so that when we edit it,
so how many creeks actually run in and through Reed Park?
Yeah.
I would say 8 or more. I mean, all of those tributaries. In fact, the land where the library sits on, the creek ran across West Boulevard, and there was a big lake that was there when it was Lazy Bee Stables long before the library. And so, you went fishing in the creek or you stepped in it and things of that nature. So there's one there, and that actual tributary now runs through the park, and there's a bridge down there that actually, that's one of the pipes that we used to cross when we were going to the swimming pool. So that's one of the areas. But in terms of Reed Park, there's another tributary that runs through the spine of the planned park, and that flows out to Irwin Creek, or what we call Little Sugar Creek then. And then there's another tributary that runs off of West Boulevard through the Wilmot community. And so there are any number of natural waterways along the boulevard that feed into Irwin Creek. And then West of, of West Boulevard, you actually have Taggart Creek, which comes off at Billy Graham and West Boulevard, where the new Renaissance community is being developed. Taggart Creek and Irwin Creek meet up and converge into Sugar Creek. And of course, Sugar Creek runs through the Renaissance Park area where Tyvola, where the home of the Hornets used to be. So there's any number of natural waterways that flow through the West Boulevard corridor and through the community in particular.
Okay, and can you give me any specific memories of swimming in the creeks and playing in the creeks and stuff like that?
Well, I can give you a lot of memories. Long before they had the infrastructure, you know, the stormwater, you know, the curb and gutter improvements. When we were kids, we actually had, there were ditches on the side of the street. So when it rained, we as kids, of course, we'd pick up sticks and, you know, we'd play stick races. You know, that was, we didn't have video games, so you had to, you know, create your own fun. So we'd throw sticks into the ditches and see whose stick was the fastest. And so, you know, and that's what we did. But actually, as I said before, when I went to Amy James, and kids, it was when Amy James was an all-black school then, we'd get out of school and all the boys, you know, we were headed down to the tributary that leads from the spring to the creek, you know, to see who could actually jump it. I mean, so, you know, you had to be an official creek jumper. If you didn't make it and you fell in, of course you got wet, and of course you got picked on. But so, you know, to be an official creek jumper, you had to actually clear the tributary. And of course, I cleared. Some others didn't clear, and there may have been times when I didn't clear. But the mere fact was that all of us, we had fun, and that's what the things that we did. You know, before Dalton Village was built, we had what was called the Tarzan Vine. And so you'd swing out down the big ravine, and, you know, you had 7 or 8 kids jumping, and then down at the very bottom of it, you had logs that was kind of stacked, because at the bottom it was like swamp water. It was real stinking and muddy, and if you missed the Tarzan Vine and you happened to hit, you knew you were going to be muddy and stinking. But all of the kids, when you couldn't find us in the community, we were at the Tarzan Vine. We were in the creeks, or we were in the woods, you know, at that particular time playing G.I. Joe. So all of this land was natural area, and it was familiar with you. You know, one of my childhood family friends, Reginald Taylor, whose family was the first in Reed Park. Reginald Taylor was a naturalist, and he loved the woods. And so we'd go out in the woods, and, you know, we'd clear off a big area, and we'd take, you know, a frying pan or whatever else, and, you know, cut up potatoes and, you know, cook potatoes in the woods, or cook meat in, you know, did a lot of things. You know, it was just a lot of fun. So.
What kinds of things did you find in the creeks besides pollutants at this point?
Well, at that particular time, there was in the streams, there were crayfish.
About what year was this that you were doing all this?
Oh, in the 60s?
60s, okay.
Yeah, 60s.
So crayfish.
Yeah, crayfish, and you would find turtles that were all along in the creek. I guess that was when it was more healthier during that particular time, but you don't see that anymore. Of course, you see footprints now of raccoons, or maybe, you know, you might see deer track, but you don't see as many animals and things, because when we were coming up, of course, you see rabbits. When we played at the playground long before the recreation center, you'd see fox that would come across, and of course you see deer, and it was just a natural area. And you hope not to see snakes, so that's you hope not to see snakes, but if you saw one, you avoided them, or they avoided you, and there you have it. Mm-hmm. And so
you did fishing in the creeks?
There are some fish in the creek now, you know, a little small, but you don't fish in the creek anymore, because, you know, it's just not safe.
When you were younger, did you ever catch them and eat them?
No, 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 no. We caught them out of the pond that was where the library is, and you would eat them. But or then you would go up to Acox Lake, which was right off of Tyvola, right at Tyvola and Steel Creek. There was a lake back there where the VFW building is now. Just beyond that, there was what we call Acox Lake, and a lot of cod fishing and catfish were in there. That's where you actually went and fished and things of that nature. But for us as kids, as boys, we just wanted to be in the creek. You take your shoes off. If you didn't go swimming, you just, you got in the water and you walked the creek. That's what you did. You had fun.
Your mom talked about getting water from the spring to use for cooking and cleaning and drinking and bathing and washing and that type of thing. Do you remember that? Or was that before you were born?
That was a little bit before my time, but I do remember the spring, and I do remember that the spring was one of the places that was off limits to kids. Mr. Monroe, who actually lived just, below the spring, he was like the gatekeeper for the spring, and he didn't allow kids to get in that spring because we didn't know the importance and the significance of that particular spring providing water for the community. So if you were a kid, if you went anywhere near it, you knew it was off limits, because if he saw you, he got you away from there. So
did you ever view it as a resource, or was it always just like a recreation thing for you?
The spring?
Yeah.
No, I came to understand as I got older, and when I started working in the community, the significance of the spring to the life of the community. As it was talked about, that's where, when the community was founded, that people got their water for drinking, for cooking, and for bathing. And so, having a fresh water supply and a safe water supply meant that you were healthy, meant that you could wash, you could cook, you could drink it. So,
what types of odd things did you see in the creeks, or pollutants did you ever see in the creeks as you were growing up and as time went on?
Well, as time went on, you see, there were times when, we walk home from school, and sometimes you'd see the water flowing clear. But then there were other times it looked real murky. And when it looked murky, you know that something was wrong. Something was coming from upstream. Something had gotten in it, it was contaminated. And so, you start to begin to look at things like, what types of environmental concerns. And they're definitely now with the creeks, with Irwin Creek particularly, in the way it is, it's not safe for kids to play there. Now, a month ago I did see some kids on the Clanton Park side near Abilene. There were 2 kids who were actually getting in there. When we were growing up, it was much safer. Now it's much more contaminated. And so it's not, as I was been told, not safe for humans to come in contact with it. But is that reversible? Yes, it needs to be reversed, because not only for the wildlife, but for kids and just for this community to have, good, fresh water that's uncontaminated.
Golf balls before. Did you ever see anything else funny like that?
Oh, golf balls?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we used to pick up golf balls out of the creek all the time. But now at some points you see tires in the creek. You see a lot of bottles, because everything that flows out of the drainage basins, if it's not natural, then it's going to flow towards the creeks, and that's what you actually see in the creeks. And so hopefully this corridor can organize a clean sweep campaign and start to clean out a lot of that, and start to address the issues that make the creeks unhealthy, because it's a resource for all of us. And now, at that particular point, you didn't see people that wanted to live too close to the creek, but now it's a natural amenity. And so when we talk about, look where we are. you've got connectivity to every community along the West Boulevard corridor. The Reed Park community needs that same access. But then you've got the public health issues where, you know, if you look at organizations like the Trust for Public Lands, and they talk about the impact of, you know, open green space and greenways in terms of reducing crime, raising the amenity value and economic development potential of areas where they're located. You talk about the connectivity, the walkability, those types of things, and then the actual function of using these natural amenities to enhance educational opportunities. Certainly at Behringer Academy, at Reed Park Academy, that type of learning environment is essential to kids performing academically. And so we want to see that natural relationship between the social sciences and the environmental sciences linked to the greenways and to the park spaces and to educational enhancement at those educational facilities. And so there you have it.
Were you ever afraid of getting sick when you were getting in the creeks as a young?
Didn't think about it.
Never thought about it.
Didn't think about it.
You said that when it got murky, did you guys not go in it,
No.
or you still went in it?
There were two things that you didn't do. When it was murky, you didn't get in it. And of course, when it rained and the water was high, you left it alone. Those were the rules, because you could easily, you know, lose your life. But when the water was ankle deep, or, you know, if it came up to your knees and things of that nature, you were fine. But as long as it wasn't flowing fast, it was okay. And, you know, our parents might have thought otherwise if they had known where we were, but that was just it.
What did you ever see any major flooding of the creeks?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What do you remember about that?
That the water cresting and rising over the banks. And there's areas along this area where if you go across Clanton Road, on the other side, water was backing up close to, you know, people's houses. It was just that high. I don't know if it was a 20-year flood, 50-year flood, or a 100-year flood, but I do remember flood happening where the Cunningham's house was literally flooded out on the land where we stayed. So I've seen significant flooding. Doesn't occur often, but when it does, then it's a force to be reckoned with. So.
What sorts of help do people in the community give each other when that flooding happens?
Well, now there's no houses. You just that's in that natural swim buffer now. Mm-hmm. So at that particular time, all you could do is just help them to get their belongings to higher ground. And but that's one of the reasons why we wanted to see that natural area converted into an interior park and connected to the greenway, so that, you know, you've got adequate recreational amenities for the communities. All of these communities are connected, and all of them have some sort of connectivity. Reed Park is the last segment of that link to the Irwin Creek Greenway, and that's why the community is pushing so hard to see it develop. We shouldn't have to wait another 25 years to do that, to enjoy it. And our elderly residents shouldn't have to walk the streets where there are no sidewalks in order to recreate. They should be able to walk in the interior park. They should be able to access the greenway and to traverse this land. Our children should be able to do the same thing as well as our adults. And it becomes a natural amenity to the community, because with the closing of Amy James Recreation Center, with the loss of that nature fitness trail, which has become densely wooded, there are no areas in the immediate community for kids to recreate, for families to gather, for social gatherings. And so we need those types of amenities and those value-added amenities to really enhance the quality of life in the community.
Do you know what happened to some of the residents whose houses got flooded out? Did their houses get bought by the county, or
the county
bought
the county bought the Cunningham's house, and it has become a part of the Greenway Trailhead. So And that's the property where we looked at on the end of Reed Avenue at Morning Drive. And so that house has been torn down. And
Okay, so like did all of the houses that used to get flooded there, did they all get
It
torn
was-
down and the families moved
theirs
out?
was primarily the only one that was
Oh.
there that actually got
Okay.
flooded.
Okay.
And so most of the other houses were, you know, either
Farther up
west
that.
or
Okay.
east of the flood zone area.
Okay. What did these places that you were able to swim, like in Irwin Creek and thing, what did those mean to you as African American children growing up in a southern city? 'Cause I know you said that some of the parks weren't open to you. Is that?
No, it wasn't. What did it mean? It meant a place for us to recreate and to have fun. You know, if you look at kids these days, they do this. Whereas we were in the creek and we were swimming, or we were in the fields, or we were in at the Tarzan vine and things of that nature. So we got a lot of physical exercise. You know, we played G.I. Joe, or we jumped the creek. And so when you look at that, or we'd ride our bicycles, you know, at that particular time on what we call Smokehouse Speedway, that was in in the park. And so we did what kids did, and it was a nuclear community. I mean, a real tight-knit, it was a village. And so you couldn't go on any street in the community and people not know who you are. And so you were kept under the watchful eye and the protection of the adults there. And so you just felt safe. And so that's what I really remember. That's what I cherish, and that's what we work so hard now to keep that pioneering spirit and to keep that nuclear element in the community, and to rebuild it so that families that are moving in and families that are there, children that are going to the school, will have a good quality of life.
What value do you think that education and community engagement will have on the preservation and maybe even the restoration of the creeks in Reed Park?
Repeat that question. What value?
What sort of value do you think that education and community engagement have on the creeks? Like, how is that going to affect the creeks? Like educating the people and things like that.
Well, it's going to have a significant value. You know, on the one hand, when we let our residents know what the impact of open park space is, what's the impact of having recreational facilities in the community, what's the impact in terms of public safety. If you look at, again, when we talk about open park space, it's also an element that reduces crime in the neighborhood, because it gives positive recreational outlet to the community, and that return on investment means a higher quality of life. So when you go from the neighborhood association to the residents, to all constituents in the community, then that's a value added amenity. You get, as I said, the walkability, the connectivity, the public health, the educational benefit, and you raise the economic profile, and you're able to make it attractive just like any other community, and a strong and stable community. If you look at where we're located, the West Boulevard corridor, or Reed Park in particular, you've got just 2 miles, you've got the urban core, you know, Center City, Charlotte, and just a mile, you've got the intermodal rail, and you've got the airport. And then if you look just south of us, you've got all of the strong business park development, the Veterans Hospital, and the new development that's taking place even on the site where the Hornets used to play. And so in terms of all of these economic generators all around us, you know, it's a hidden jewel, just ready to really take off.
Well, do you have anything else that you want to add specifically? I've got my questions out of the way.
Couldn't add a thing.
Okay. Then you want to go ahead and start walking down that way?
Yeah, we can do that.
They've
Give me
stopped chainsawing.
All right, now, let me just give you a frame of reference. This is the east this way, west is here, north, and of course, south. And of course, that's the center city in that direction. And then the airport is out to the west. To the south is Billy Graham and West Tyvola area. And of course, to the east is South End. And so Reed Park is nestled less than 3 miles from the center city and out on the West Boulevard corridor. And there are approximately 18 neighborhoods that make up the West Boulevard corridor, and Reed Park is one of those neighborhoods. And of course, you know, there's active neighborhood organizations, and then there's some inactive. We've been active for close to 30 some odd years, and long before I grew up and was able to do my part in terms of keeping. There were other efforts. I'm not the first, nor am I the last in terms of the leadership coming out of Reed Park that looks to stabilize it. But I guess in terms of, we don't look at ourselves as being an isolated island in Reed Park. In West Boulevard, we look at ourselves as being a part of the core of the community. And so the question is, how do you create a sense of place that, you know, welcomes new families to the community, but also strengthens the bonds from those families that have been there historically, and to connect to the institutions that are associated with it, as well as to connect to the land. And it is the land in and of itself. You know, these natural amenities, the flora and the fauna. Just listen to the birds and things of that nature, and all of the variety of wildlife, including that's in the wetlands which run throughout this corridor. That biodiversity, who could ask for more? I mean, when you think about the perception of the West Boulevard corridor or the Reed Park community, it's always negative. But when you come to places like this is, it's a jewel, and it's a sanctuary. And so it just needs to, we continue to tell our story and raise our profile and create opportunities for revitalization, the kind of revitalization that keeps people in place, that creates a sense of place rather than displaces people. And that's a part of the history and legacy of people like the people in Reed Park. They were displaced from other areas like Brooklyn and other areas that were suffering from urban renewal. And you had visionaries like Ross Reed, who is the community's founder, who had a vision, purchased land, and asked that land be subdivided and sold to African American families who wanted their share of the American dream. You know, at that particular time, when he started purchasing land back in 1918, as early as 1918, until he built the first house in 1935, that was a revolutionary concept. And so we build on that spirit, that pioneering effort, where people built their houses from the ground up, or they took military barracks and converted them into homes, and subsequently you had, you know, the churches and the schools to come up. You know, from an educational standpoint, we have Amy James, who started the first school in the community. Subsequently, the elementary school was named after her, and she was known for her ability to educate children, African American children, particularly African American males who other educators said couldn't learn. She took them under her wing, and she, being a strict disciplinarian, taught them. And so it's in that particular spirit, in that particular vein, the spirit of Amy James, the spirit of Ross Reed, and those who settled the land, that we continue to strive and work hard to renew, revitalize, and maintain that sense of place within Reed Park and within the West Boulevard corridor. That's our story. That's history. It's our legacy. It's a beautiful story to tell. That's all I can say.
It is nice work. Let's
It would actually,
Do they have a possibility for a date yet?
no, we've been told that it would be 2016 or 2017, and that's why we're fighting so hard to move that timeline up. It doesn't make sense to have, the majority of it completed, and it's been 25 plus years since we proposed this plan.
Yeah, since this plan has been
Right.
Yeah,
And
you're
so,
right. It's been a long time.
But what I'd like to actually do, you get in Arbor Glen, in the Greenway, you'll actually get a better feel for
Okay.
the creek itself. You can actually see it. So why don't we just go there?
Okay.
All right?
yeah,
can
that
do
sounds
that.
Good
All
deal.
right, sounds good.
Go here. Kids, boys, we go down there and we'd be down in there swimming. So my actual first swimming lessons weren't necessarily in a public pool. It was in the creek, and that's where we hung out, So just a lot of good memories. We'd actually the tributary that flows through the community, through the proposed interior park or the planned interior park. We'd get out of school and we'd walk from, go down Amy James, go down through the woods, and then after school, we all pull our books down and we'd be jumping over the creek, see who could make it, and
Ricky, can you, just because I'm sort of ignorant of the proposed plan, can you just kind of give me a recap of that proposed plan, or like what's proposed?
Well, yeah, actually, what's proposed is an interior park, much like Ladder Park in Dilworth. If you look at the topography of the land, it's very similar in terms of how it's planned and shaped. But what we actually talk about, the land that you see just west of here, is where they had the old nature and fitness trails associated with Amy James Rec Center and the park there. And of course, in 2008, they closed the park down, and long before that, the fitness and nature trails were so densely wooded, it didn't create an element of safety for residents in the community. So, and it was such a narrow trail path that it made it kind of unsafe for residents. And so what we had proposed to do is, rather than have a secluded and isolated nature fitness trail, that we would swap land with the county for the land in the interior part, which Joe Withrow, who was a former city council person, donated to us. And so that's the idea, was to build housing on that current land where you had the nature and fitness trails in exchange for building an interior park here. And so the park would actually have eyes on the park. It would be connected to the Greenway, to where you've got all kinds of benefits. You got public health benefits, you've got educational benefits associated with kids, with environmental learning and social sciences, connected to these natural amenities in the community. In addition to having the Greenway connect here with the interior park, with paved trails through the interior of the park, and then have, areas that highlight the natural history of the community, the spring. And then the community has also gotten a grant. We've been talking about putting a pergola there around the spring, to where people can walk and sit down and congregate. And then you've got the other types of basketball courts. We want a splash pad and other park amenities there in the community that would actually complement the community. And so we get all of those bigger benefits. The connectivity to, for example, Clanton Park is just across the creek, and there's no sense in people on the back end of Clanton Park having to go all the way up to Clanton Road to access it, when you could actually have a footbridge that crosses here, allows people on the back end of Clanton Park to come across to access the Greenway and go, and then.
So they can go like this or like that.
Or like that, up,
Yeah.
up there. So
Yeah.
you get all of those benefits. So those are, and of course, the basketball courts and areas to play for the kids and splash pads. Who wouldn't? I'd get a splash pad myself. So. Hey,
We
so
can do that right now.
those are the kind of things that we want.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.